Released to Japan in 1989 and America in 1990, Dracula's Curse was a game that here in the UK we wouldn't get until 1992. As such, I'd already moved on to my cool as heck Japanese model Sega Mega Drive by then, and so sadly Dracula's Curse passed me by. The game did later re-release on the Wii, Wii U and 3DS through their virtual console systems, but by that point I was very much a PC gamer. So it is now in 2021 that I finally get to have a crack at it. And I'm excited. The game is a classic 2D action platformer, much like the previous offerings in the series. It has somewhat of a reputation for being a hard game, and so as I first venture into it, I'm a little concerned as to whether or not I'll be able to finish it. The controls are fairly responsive, with the dreaded stairs certainly being easier to mount than previously. One thing that did irritate me was the jumping kinda works in a way where you're forced to commit to a forward jump or an upward jump. Not being able to change direction might not seem like much, but we're so used to it in modern games that it definitely added a layer of difficulty for me. That said, the whipping is great, the sub-weapons we've come to know and love are all present and fun to use. Although the holy water is rumoured to be rather overpowered, I did try to investigate that as I played. Some of the big selling points of this game back in the day were that it was the first Castlevania with multiple characters whom you could switch between. Also, the game has branching paths and multiple endings, not only giving it great replay value, but making it hugely ambitious for its time. Something the game kept from previous entries, which was decidedly unpopular amongst casual players, is the knockback when you take damage. As the filthiest of casuals ever, this frustrated me no end as I played through the game. The other thing that could be seen as a difficulty spike are some of the bosses. Alucard here kicked my whip-wielding butt for a good few times before I eventually figured out his pattern and executed the fight properly. In terms of visuals, I don't feel like the game particularly broke ground for the series. However, the series itself is renowned for achieving amazingly ambitious things within the hardware limitations of the NES, and so whilst Castlevania 3 might be more of what we're used to from Castlevania games is a very high standard for the time. The sound effects are again great for the time, and in particular avoid too much of that shrill or piercing kind of noise that some NES titles can just be so hard to stick with because of. Where Castlevania 3 really blows me away though, is in its musical soundtrack. Major fan favourite Vampire Killer is rendered beautifully in all its chiptune glory here. But I was saddened to learn that personal favourite Bloody Tears, whilst appearing in Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest, does not return in 3. However, even with points off for this omission, it's hard for me to not gush over the music that is on offer. The game was very difficult, and I played through a good 4.5 stages whilst trying to figure out footage for this video. In fact, the only reason I stopped playing the game was because I was using save states so that I could capture footage where I needed it, and I accidentally overwrote a save state, meaning that I lost all of my progress. Otherwise I would have carried on playing. And so we come to the final scores, the bit where I put my reviewer hat on and try to give this game some arbitrary ratings. The categories upon which I'll be judging all games that I review in this way are difficulty, visuals, sound, playability, and then an overall score which will be an average from the 4 above. And so my scores for Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse are difficulty, I would put it at a 7. I'm not a very good gamer, and I think if I was a good gamer, this wouldn't be the most challenging game in the world, but it's definitely on the harder end. Visuals, for its time, I'd like to give it an 8. I think the game looks fantastic and still holds up really well today. Although, this could be skewed slightly by the fact that I played the Curse of the Moon games recently, which are very much tributes to this game. Sound, I think the game gets a straight 10, some of the best sound I've ever heard a NES make. And playability, I'd like to give the game a 7, because I think that whilst it does have some little foibles here and there, as NES games go, the controls are intuitive and responsive, and it felt good to play. And so that gives us an overall average of 8 out of 10. And that gives this game the first ever, but nonetheless highly prized, Retro Retrospectives Squid of Approval, which is a little acknowledgement that I'll be giving to any games that score 8s, 9s and 10s, just to acknowledge that they are some of the best games that I've reviewed. Oh, and for the record, I never did finish it.